At that time, Tuan had just graduated from university and moved to a new city to find a job. He found a small room in a rather deserted neighborhood, room number 13. Although number 13 is often considered unlucky, Tuan is not a superstitious person, so he didn't care much. Furthermore, the room rental price is very cheap, suitable for his budget. Room number 13 is located on the third floor of an old house. The room is about 20 square meters, with a small window facing the alley behind the house. The first day he moved in, Tuan felt the atmosphere in the room was a bit cold and gloomy, even though it was midsummer outside. You see unusual signs. Tuan started noticing strange phenomena just a few days after moving in. At night, he often heard light footsteps moving around in his room, even though he was sure he had locked the door. Sometimes in the middle of the night, he felt like someone was staring at him. But when he turned on the light, the room was still empty. One evening, while Tuan was sitting at his desk working, he suddenly heard a sigh from behind. Turning around, he saw nothing but an empty bed. Tuan felt cold down his spine, but he told himself that perhaps it was because he was tired and stressed from work that he imagined those things. One day, while taking out the trash, Tuan met the landlady. She is an older woman, with a gentle appearance but a somewhat sad face. Tuan recounted the strange things he encountered in his motel room. The landlady was silent for a moment, then sighed. "Honey, this room number 13 used to be rented by a young girl. Her name was Lan. She was a very beautiful and cheerful person. But one day it was discovered that she had hanged herself in her apartment. Since then, strange things have always happened in room number 13, and the fateful night has also come." Tuan began to feel worried and uneasy. That night, he decided to stay awake to see if anything really happened in the motel room. When the clock struck 12, the room suddenly became strangely cold. Tuan clearly heard footsteps and sighs getting closer and closer. Suddenly, from the corner of the room, a shadowy figure appeared. It was a young girl, long loose hair, sad eyes. Tuan stood frozen, unable to speak. The girl approached him, then stopped and whispered, "Help me." Tuan trembled and asked, "Are you Lan? What do you need my help with?" The girl pointed towards the window, then slowly disappeared. Tuan understood that he had to do something to help the girl escape. The next morning, Tuan went to a nearby temple and asked the monks for help. They agreed to go to the motel room to pray for Lan's ghost. The ceremony took place in a solemn atmosphere, filled with incense smoke. After the ceremony, Tuan felt the atmosphere in the room became warmer and more comfortable. Since then, the strange phenomena also disappeared. Tuan understood that Lan's ghost had been freed, and he felt more at peace. Tuan decides to move to a new place, bringing with him memories of strange experiences and an emotional ghost story. Room number 13 has since become peaceful. No one hears footsteps or sighs late at night anymore. Last month, I moved into a small house on the outskirts of the city to focus on my writing. The house was quite old, but located in a quiet area, perfect for my creative work. On the very first day I moved in, I encountered a black cat. This cat had piercing green eyes that glowed in the dark and seemed to appear out of nowhere. I love animals, so I didn't pay much attention to the superstitions about black cats. I named it Moon and would often feed it whenever it showed up. However, Moon only came at night and would disappear by morning. One night, I was working on a story when I heard scratching at the door. Moon stood outside, its green eyes gleaming in the moonlight. I opened the door for Moon and continued working. Suddenly, I felt someone standing behind me. When I turned around, I saw Moon staring intently into a dark corner of the room. I began to notice strange phenomena after Moon's arrival. Objects in the house would occasionally move on their own. Mysterious whispers echoed in the dead of night, and I had haunting dreams about a strange woman who seemed to be chasing me. One day, I met Mrs. Mai, an elderly neighbor who lived nearby. She told me that the house used to belong to a woman named Huang. Mrs. Huang was a lonely woman who loved cats and had a black cat just like Moon. However, Mrs. Huang had mysteriously passed away in the house on a stormy night. Since then, no one dared to go near the house due to rumors about Mrs. Huang's ghost and the black cat. I started to feel worried and uneasy. One night, while I was sleeping, Moon jumped onto my bed and began to wail strangely. I woke up to see Moon staring intently at the window. I approached and saw a faint figure outside, its bright eyes staring back at me. I opened the window, but the figure disappeared instantly. Only Moon remained, still staring into the void. Terrified, I decided to seek help from a village shaman. The shaman agreed to come to my house to perform a ritual to appease Mrs. Huang's spirit. The ceremony took place in a solemn atmosphere, with the shaman chanting and burning incense, filling the room with smoke. Moon sat quietly beside me, its green eyes following the shaman's every move. After the ritual, the shaman told me that Mrs. Huang's spirit had been freed, and the house would no longer be haunted. From then on, the strange phenomena ceased, and I felt the house becoming warmer and more peaceful. Moon continued to stay with me, but now it no longer brought ominous warnings. I felt grateful for Moon's presence because it led me to learn about Mrs. Huang's tragic story and helped her spirit find peace. I continued my writing in tranquility and creativity. The story of the black cat Moon and Mrs. Huang's ghost became an unforgettable memory in my life, reminding me of the wonders and mysteries of life. I wrote down this story as a message about compassion and love, whether for wandering souls or mysterious four-legged friends. Moon remained by my side as a loyal companion, and whenever I looked into its green eyes, I remembered Mrs. Huang and this haunting yet heartfelt tale.